Hi guys, hope all is well. So let's drill down into Shylock's character, shall we? We're going to Act 3 now. And I just want to look at why he's such an interesting character. There's loads of reasons why, but I want to look at a couple of things that we could definitely think about writing about Shylock in relation to why he's complicated. As I said in previous video, like he's the play's villain. But Shakespeare has this ability to look at him and, not paint him as a one-dimensional bad guy. He's in fact very sympathetic. And I think one of the reasons is because of his relationship with his daughter Jessica. Now again, I might be wrong. I'm only trying to give you ideas. But I would love you to be critical thinkers and come up with your own ideas. As long as you can support them with evidence, I'm pleased if you disagree with me. But Act 3, Scene 1, again, I'm not reading the whole thing. There's no need to read the whole thing. But Act 3, Scene 1, there's just this little interaction. I'm going to keep an eye on the time here, but I won't spend too long. There's a little interaction where Jessica, as you know, is his daughter, okay? And Jessica has eloped with Lorenzo. And when Shylock comes on stage, he's greeted by this kind of sniggering fools, Salarino and Salanio, who are, they're deeply unpleasant characters. I really don't like them at all. I think they're like little kind of bullying schoolboys. And they're waiting for Shylock. And when he walks in, Salanio says to him, "Sturdy Shylock. How now, Shylock? What news among the merchants? Sturdy Shylock. Any news?" And he knows that. He's kind of laughing. He knows what the news is. The news is that Shylock's daughter has run away with a Christian. And Shylock responds, he's angry. "You knew none so well as you of my daughter's flight. You bloody knew. You knew she was going to run away." So, he's clearly, he's angry, but he's also humiliated. Now, I want to talk about why he's humiliated in a moment. There's tension here. Salarino, "That's certain. I, for my part, knew the tailor that made the wings she flew withal." So his language is like he's thought, yeah, I knew it was going to happen, yeah. And he's making light of it. He's laughing. He's enjoying Shylock's suffering. Now, if we see somebody who's suffering, that immediately makes them more sympathetic. If we then see their suffering being mocked, if we see their the humanity of them being belittled, then we go, well, actually, I don't like you who's belittling, and the fella who's being belittled, well, maybe have a little bit more time for him. Okay? Salanio, "And Shylock, for his own part, knew the bird was fledged, and then it is the complexion of them all to leave the dam." Now, you might go, what? It's imagery, okay? There's imagery. You don't have to learn it. It's got to do with birds. Fledgling is the baby birdie, and the dam is the mother. And when the fledgling reaches the right age of maturity, it leaves the nest. Okay, but what they're doing is they're laughing at you, like, "Oh, you should have known she was old enough. You should have kept a better eye on her." And Shylock says, he's really hurting here. He says, "She is damned for it." Salarino says, "That's for certain, if the devil be her judge." So in other words, because you're Jewish, you're wicked, and now that she's become a Christian, she's got a better chance of, getting into heaven. That's bigotry and discrimination evidence. But look at this. "My own flesh and blood to rebel. And then, I say my daughter is my flesh and blood." And Salarino says, "There is more difference between thy flesh and hers than between jet and ivory." So jet and ivory is black and white. So he's saying you couldn't be more different from your daughter. In other words, he's saying your daughter is a lovely human being, and she's decent, and that's why she's got away from you, and you're horrible. But when I look at that scene, I'm going, come on. Haven't you got loads to write about there? First of all, there's loads of tension. Then there's kind of the dialogue, the interaction, the use of imagery. And then you've got these really interesting characters, the Salarino and Salanio, who are, representative of kind of the worst of us. These jokey bullies, mocking and belittling somebody who's clearly suffering. And then you've got Shylock, who in many ways we shouldn't feel sympathetic for, because he has been a very strict father to Jessica, very controlling. But every father in this society that we're studying would have regarded their child, especially their daughter, but their children, as their property, and therefore, for them to marry without his permission is, a public humiliation. But Shylock loves his daughter. He says twice, "My own flesh and blood, my flesh and blood." See there? Now that's called repetition. And the fact that she has run away, and I know, like, he talks about his ducats, my daughter, my ducats, my ducats, my daughter. We know that, right? We've done that already. But when he says that, it's like he's hurting. And is it any wonder that he hates these guys, that he wants to get his revenge on what they represent, which is the Christian community of Venice? Because he feels that he's like something precious. The daughter who he loves has been taken from him, and he feels humiliated by that. But he also, that humiliation is further underlined, or I'm going to use a big word alert, exacerbated by the fact that, he's been mocked publicly because of this. So surely in that little moment, there's some element of maybe sympathy for Shylock, but certainly an ability to explain why he's an interesting character. Thought that might be of use. Can I do one more? Came out with this little video. So he then, in the same scene, this is Act 3, Scene 1, Shylock has this conversation with Tubal. Now, Tubal is another member of the Jewish community in Venice. And it's just this little interaction where Shylock, he greets Tubal. He really likes him. "I thank thee, good Tubal. Good news, heard in Genoa." And Tubal says, "Your daughter spent in Genoa, as I heard, one night 80 ducats." Now a score is 20. 4 20s is 80. And that is a small fortune. So Jessica, as you know, didn't just elope, but she stole his money. And now she's squandering his money. In one night, she spent 80 ducats, which is a huge amount of money. Now, again, you might go, so what? Shylock is materialistic, or Shakespeare is saying because he's Jewish, because feeding into those tropes that he's interested in money. Bullshit. Nonsense. Rubbish. What do we see? Shylock lives in a really... I'm going to write a word on the screen here, and I'm sorry for using it. He's in a really invidious position. He is a man who is despised because of who he is, because of his culture, because of his faith, because of his identity. He suffers discrimination every day of his life. People spit on him and curse him and humiliate him. And yet he's managed to be successful. He's managed to carve out a business. And every penny he has, or ducat he has been hard won against the odds. And now he hears that his daughter has blown that money with no appreciation for how hard it was to get that money. Again, for me, there's humanity there. For me, I understand that he's suffering not because of the money, but because of the humiliation and the sense that all of that work he put in, that his daughter would have seen every single day, and she didn't care. Am I being too harsh on Jessica? I hope you agree. I hope you think I am. I hope you have an opinion. English is about opinions. I'm just trying to give you, ideas, key moments that you can discuss. Shylock, thou stickst a dagger in me. Great use of imagery. I shall never see my goal again. 4 ducats at a sitting. He can't believe it. 4 ducats again. You can see the repetition for emphasis. There came divers of Antonio's creditors in my company to Venice, Tubal says, that swear he cannot choose but break. And when Shylock hears that news, don't forget his blood is already up. His daughters, run away. He's been humiliated in his place of work by Salarino and Salanio. His heart is broken for this flesh and blood that he's lost. His fortune has been squandered that he's worked so hard for and suffered so much to gather. And now he hears that Shylock, that Antonio, who for him like embodies, represents all of his suffering, that he's not going to be able to pay his debts. And his debt that he owes the main body of his debt to Shylock. And Shylock says, oh, I am very glad of it. I'll plague him. Great use of imagery. I'll torture him. I'm glad of it. Look at if you want to talk about Shakespeare's language, look at the short sentences there. Like, Shylock is almost, sorry, I misspelled that. Shylock is almost salivating there. You know what that means? Like watering at the mouth with anticipation. He's really excited about the idea that he's going to be able to get this Antonio fella. And the language he uses, plague, torture, they indicate like he's vengeful. And the point is, we know that already about him. And that's a great quote, by the way, to learn. I'll plague him, I'll torture him. Just there's 6 words, learn them. But the point is that his desire for revenge is not just because he's not vengeful because he's a bad man who enjoys, he's not a sadist who enjoys inflicting suffering on others. He is a man who's hurting. And he's hurt his whole life. And at this very moment, that hurt is at a fever pitch. It's at a high point. It's reached a zenith, an apex. Use your vocabulary. You have one. Because of the loss of his flesh and blood and his ducats and his humiliation and the pleasure that others take in his humiliation simply because of the fact that he's Jewish. No wonder he's angry. No wonder he wants revenge. I think that'll do. I think that's not bad. I'm happy with that. Hope you found that in some way useful. Cheers, guys.